my own relation to it necessarily. At least it's more about these both how these white animals are perceived in folklore, in old traditions, but also this old tradition of having spirit animals or fetches, or how they function, and so it's more exploring that, really. But of course it is also personal. I must admit, it's but not as direct as it might seem. Of course, it's both ravens and the white raven. I chose the name for a reason, of course, many years ago, and it's something I've wanted to explore as well on in a musical way, almost since I started Wardruna. So now was the time.
So in a sense, it's an exploration of why you chose that name for yourself.
Yeah, in a way you can say that that's at least part of it. But I also I always try to keep a level of distance in my music and in my poetry, in terms of leaving a lot of open ends, suggesting things rather than stating them very because what you do when you create this level of distance, or ask questions rather than make statements, is that you leave a lot of room for people to have their own interpretations of these things as well. So I always, whether or not it was the rune songs, there is of course a level of personal interpretation, but I try to leave a lot of space for the listener to have their own, or have the possibility and potential to have their own interpretation and experience of the song and theme itself. So it's not the story of me, or it's not bombarded with my own stuff necessarily.
Is that something that the traditional stories would do as well? They would use symbols, but they would like using the animals, etc., as vectors, as symbols, but leaving the stories open-ended for people's own interpretations. Or were they very definite about the stories they were telling?
Well, both, I would say. But Old Norse poetry are masters of these poets were masters of applying multiple meanings into their poetry. That's almost the backbone of it. Speaking in these systems of kennings and heiti, which are basically just images, synonyms, or everything is described in an image upon an image, in a way that makes a lot of room for interpretation, and you have to basically decipher it in a way to understand the true meaning as well. So it's like almost like a riddle, and that's kind of what I like with the runic poems we have as well. The medieval runic poems is that they don't serve you as truth, but rather it's more like a riddle where you're almost left with more questions after reading it than before. And I think that's a very I like that way of teaching, and I like that way of learning as well. Sort of capture the curiosity and ask questions. I think that's a very positive thing in terms of learning.
With these stories, these older stories, and these older ways of thinking, does it give you a real insight into the people of that time, and also an insight into the people of now?
Yeah. Well, yeah, definitely. You can see the people beyond the old poetry as well, and some of them are quite personal. Some of them describes things that well, you couldn't have described it if you weren't there, in a way. So which kind of creates an authenticity towards the original poet as well. That it's not just made up stuff. It's real, and so that kind of authenticates it a bit. And I guess my poetry as well. It comes from me. It comes from my own experiences and my own ponderings and my own questions.
I mean, thematically, how different would you say your poetry is written in the now than the poetry and the stories are getting told and written all those centuries ago?
Well, that's their stories, and they come from a different time and live different lives, and well, both my music and my poetry is not supposed to copy theirs. It's not about historical reenactment or escapism in any kind of form. It's taking parts of something old, but the goal is always to create something new that resonates here and now today, based upon our needs and our current situation. But at the same time, that's why certain old poems resonate more than others, even today, because I think for a piece of art to relate to be able to relate to its contemporary audience, it has to have a sort of there has to be some sort of contemporary hook to it that allows the by hook I mean relevance, that allows the listener to connect to it, like the poem Völuspá, which is so you can almost feel it's been written out of the contemporary world situation in so many ways, and it describes these cycles that are continuous. They still happen. The rise and fall of civilizations or societies, or the death of rebirth of nature, or however you want to interpret it. It's so relevant still, and I think that's why me as a contemporary artist find it so rewarding to work with as well, and I think that's why it resonates with the contemporary audience as well.
Themes of nature are powerful in the old poems, and I guess because the people then live closer to nature, because you're actually really inside it, whereas we like to think that we're above nature even though we're not. I mean, is that a wisdom that could be learnt from the old stories and poems?
Yeah, definitely. But you have to remember that even though I would say largely, at least the origin of the old traditions are very much nature-based, and it comes from an animistic tradition. You have to remember that that their relation to nature was completely different to ours, because, as you say, they were much more a part of it. They battled with it. They did whatever they could to control it in a way, which I guess is what led us here. this need to control nature, but we've kind of taken it too far, and so our needs in terms of nature will necessarily be a more romantic one, and or our perspective on nature, because we've lost the connection in so many ways, in at least in Western culture. So our approach and our needs will necessarily be different, and that's yeah. And if the album, I would say the album as a whole definitely in a subtle way promotes this animistic worldview, or the need for it, or I definitely think that that's something that would be beneficial for us to again view nature, our surroundings, as something sacred. I think the second we took the sacredness out of nature and yeah, in the first place put it up in the sky or somewhere else, made it problematic, made it easier to overexploit and to become industrial beings. So I definitely think that's a worldview I promote. I hate preaching and claiming to know the truth, but if the album has any moral propositions or suggestions, I would say that is it. It subtly promotes the sacredness of nature.
Well, when we talk about the sacredness of nature, I mean, and the animistic themes, is this just an understanding that there's life in everything? So from a tree to a bird to a small animal to a large animal, everything has life, and you have to respect that life, or is it or is
life,
it even
spirit,
deeper, spiritual, more profound?
Well, it's both, I would say, but that also, I think that's kind of irrelevant if you choose to put a spiritual aspect of it and calling it spirit, or if you call it energy, or if you have a more scientific approach to the soul of a stone and call it a frequency. Everything has a frequency. Doesn't really matter. The point is that you have on a deeper level that you respect it, and that doesn't mean you can't hunt the animal, but it's about respect. It's about acknowledging that we're part of something, and that circle we're a part of needs to be treated with respect.
For you, how does this manifest itself? Obviously, with your art, your music, and your words, does it manifest itself in other ways?
Yeah, it is my personal. I would say I do have an animistic worldview and have personal beliefs that are connected to that. So of course that is reflected through various things in my daily life, of course, and very much so in my art. That's my my channel in a way.
I mean, does it manifest itself in a ritualistic way, or is it just something that you just walk in nature and you open all the senses and you feel an understanding of it instead of just ignoring it?
Well, no. For me, it's a spiritual thing also, and it's connected to my personal beliefs, and so I am active in terms of that.
So, and how does it work in a spiritual way?
Well, what is a ritual? That can be so many things, you know. When people think about rituals, they or sacrifices or these ceremonial ceremonies, people tend to always jump to these grandeur rituals and ceremonies and which is of course a nice thing and something I've been part of, and do, but it's not necessarily about that. A ritual can be just lifting up your plate before you eat it and give thanks for the ability to for the gift of having the food. You know, it can be so many things, and my point is that it's a view of the world that I try as best I can to to carry in all everything I do.
Well, there's a lot of this because you grew up on a small island, so you were already surrounded by nature. It's very much part of your life from a very early period.
Yeah, I guess so, but yeah, I very much appreciate nature and yeah, the aesthetic, um, the aesthetics of nature or the force, and has always had a big impact on me. Um, the beauty of nature has a big impact of me, um, but more in a, I would say it's a like you said, I grew up with it, so it's not necessarily something that I reflected much upon because it was just how it always had been. So in these days, sometimes being away from nature can be the thing that inspires me. You know, because it creates longing, and longing is a powerful tool in these creative processes. So yeah, nature is very inspiring in my and very inspiring for me as a person and in my art. But sometimes the lack of nature can be kind of the what fuels it. So
So, why did you choose music as a vehicle to get in touch with these ideas and feelings? Why did you not, when you were younger, just purely go straight to poetry or academia? What was it about music that gave you a platform where you could explore all this?
like it almost feels like I didn't choose music, but music chose me in a way. It's been since I was very young. You know, when I was 2-3 years old, I was obsessed by drums, like properly. And yeah, I don't know, that drive to create has always been there, and yeah, it started off with drums, but well, I soon discovered that I didn't really enjoy playing other people's music. That yeah, there wasn't energy there in a way. So that drove me to learn to play other instruments, so I could make music that I could play drums to. And then yeah, yeah, the and then came the songwriting and poetry, and which was of course very cringeworthy at the time, looking back. But but I even in like the first things I worked on, like proper songs, I can see I can see a link between that and what I do today. So it's kind of always been there in a way.
So with the music, is it an attempt to match the mood of the ideas? Is it an attempt, almost like doing a painting of a feeling or something? It's abstract, of course, but is this what you're trying to do with the music, reflecting those emotions and feelings of the culture you're fascinated in, but doing it, like you said earlier, doing it in an updated way as well?
Yeah, it's for me, it's about chasing songs. What inspires a song can be many things. It can be a sound. It can be an instrument, playing on an instrument, or the sound of an instrument, and it inspires this vision. It can be certain words that pops up. I don't know. It can be any number of things. I do most of my writing when I'm out walking. That's when I hear it or see it, and then it's about chasing it. Go back into the studio and chase down that vision of it, or how I hear it, and it's an interesting process.
So when you're out walking, when the songs come to you, is it the melodies, or is it the actual textures and the shapes of the songs?
Can be both. Sometimes it's something I see in a way. It's hard to describe, but it's like I see it, or hear it, or just a strong feeling of how it needs to feel. Yeah, and then like I said, it's about chasing it, and this goes back also to an old animistic tradition, where song hunting is something that is something you find a lot in the older Nordic folk medicine or sorcery, that knowing the songs for certain things is part of knowing the actual thing, referring to the frequency of it, or how it sounds, or but it's a very old idea that everything has a sound or a song, and going out into the nature and trying to tap into what that sound is also a technique, and something that a tradition that inspires me a lot, and is very much reflected in my own music, in the results you guys hear.
So you really have to trust your instincts. You feel a sound coming on, and you have to know that's the sound, in a sense.
Yeah, you feel it when it's right, and that's kind of why I'm not good at. I need to work in my own tempo, and to me it doesn't really. When I work, I couldn't care less what other people thinks about it, or if other people will like it. That's not a thought that's ever on my mind when in that process. I make music that I like. I chase the songs that I hear, and I think that's a healthy rule as well in general. The second you start trying to make music to please other people, or then well, I think the chances are it becomes less interesting. So if I like it, then it's a good there's a good chance that other people will like it as well.
Yeah, is it quite a surprise that something that's so personal and so instinctive and so part of you and your reaction to the world actually makes sense to so many people? When I saw you play Manchester last year, it was it was packed out, sold out gig, and people really connected with the music. It wasn't like everybody's on the mobile phones or talking to their friends. It was just silence in there for the whole gig because people were just completely entranced with what you were doing. And and for something, like I say, it's something that you make in your head that's so personal. Was that quite surprised that the people are actually really connecting with it and that depth, that level?
Yeah, yeah, it's still it's very fascinating, and it's it's a feeling that's a bit hard to describe, really, to see how much of an impact it has, and I see a lot of people um, have have strong emotional reactions to it, and I also I receive a lot of mails and letters and messages where you see that people connect very yeah in a very much in a personal way to the music, which is of course a great honor in a way. And I don't know, in the beginning it was a big surprise to me, but at the same time I could see that even the first people I showed the music to, back in like the early 2000s, they everybody seemed to react very strongly to it. So in a sense that was an indicator that the music might have this potential, but you never know. And it's for sure not what I thought in the beginning when I started out doing this. I was sure it would be way too weird for most
Yeah.
people, and yeah, also because it was so personal in a way.
Mm. So, speaking of personal, why did you take the name? I'll have to do it in English, but White Raven.
Mm. Um, well, there are several reasons for that, and some of them are personal, but it comes down to the my perception of um, well, both an animal that fascinates me, one I feel a deep connection to, and something that has a feeling, and an animal that, and a connection that has followed me for many years, long before I took the name. And I guess in that time when taking an artist name was kind of the thing you were supposed to do, it for me it was the natural thing to do, due to my personal relation to that name and to that being. So I don't want to elaborate too much onto it, other than to say that that it is a name, and it is an animal that I feel a deeper connection to.
So, a bit like what you said before about the music choosing you. Does that happen with the animal as well? In a sense, the animal chooses you. You don't choose the animal.
Yeah, in a way,
Mm.
that's that's pretty accurate.
You also talk about on the press release the wolves as well, and the predators, and the necessity of predators, and how important wolves are in the culture and the ideas. I'd be interested to hear an expansion on that idea.
Well, if you in nature, there are all of these circles, ecosystems, and when you mess up that, when you start playing God and eradicate certain elements of that circle, it's broken, and it has dramatic consequences. And we in Norway, for instance, we see it in so many different things. You tend to think that it's only certain animals that this becomes a problem to, but it comes down to everything. It goes down to even to plant life is part of the consequence when you remove an animal from that circle. It becomes an imbalance, and of course the song "Grow" is I think the most political song I've ever done, because it doesn't glorify wolves in a way. It doesn't say that. Yeah, it's not this romantic, glorified version of the wolf. It acknowledges also the cost of living alongside other predators, other animals on top of the food chain. That it's not necessarily easy, but the value of it is something. Well, if anything of any true cost, true value has a true cost. It's that simple. So of course it's much more. It feels much safer to walk in the forest if you know that you are the most dangerous thing out there. But still, it's not right. And I actually think I think it would be a healthy thing for us to not always feel so secure and to feel hunted as well. And of course, this is different. It's easy for me to say, but I do mean it. That the inconvenience of having predators a part of nature again, the way they're supposed to be, has a value that is worth paying the cost for.
Because we lose parts of ourselves, we lose sort of an awareness, his senses.
Yeah, definitely. We lose part of an important part of our being when we are never connected to that kind of feeling anymore. At least not where I come from. And but even more so, the nature needs for these circles to be complete.
In a sense, is the pandemic almost like a predator, or like a wake up? Like if you mess with nature too much, it does get its revenge.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I think this this whole situation is it's difficult to know what is what. And but pandemic or not, living the way we are, exploiting the way we are, it's only natural that there are going to be consequences, and how these consequences come, I don't know. It's I don't really know how to say, what to think about that.
Yeah, it's quite. There are a lot of. So with the music, do you actively try and develop the music as you go along, or do you just actively try and reflect what you hear? As you just whatever you hear in your head, whatever you feel, you make into that music. or is there a discipline where you think I have to keep moving the music forward, or is it just a reflection basically?
It is a reflection, but of course, if you're true to yourself, there will be a progression, a natural progression, because I'm not the same person as I was 10 years ago for many reasons, both mentally and musically as well. You know, I grow as a human, and it's only natural that the music reflects that growth as well. So it's a natural thing. It's not something I force, but I definitely see development in the music. But even though the creative concept of Wardruna is the same as it has always been since the very beginning, the creative concept follows a setup that has not changed since then. But of course, I have changed, and my skills have changed, and experience, and all of these things. So, yeah, it's only natural that there is a progression.